you guys! I'm back after Dragon Con, which I'm gonna have to try and think of doing a video for that. But first, I wanted to get to you guys a review tonight because I promised one on Tuesday and it didn't work out. So tonight we have it. Yes. What I wanted to do tonight, though, is I wanted to do a re-review of a book I've already reviewed. And that's going to be Martin's Game of Thrones. Mainly because if you did see my previous review, it was probably noticeable that with a few drinks I babble a lot. So I wasn't able to get in as much as I probably should have. Which is why I want to re-review it for those of you that really do use my book reviews as a form of reference when it comes to choosing out books or whether or not you like to discuss them. So, there we go. In case you guys are unaware of what this book is about, or even if you don't know what the show is about, which is based off of this book, at least season 1 is based off of this first book, is that we have three main areas that the storyline is going in. First area, we have a king with families below the king that serve the king, and then, you know, people below the families as well. Essentially what's going on is that you have families that are trying to climb the social ladder, and by doing so, they are either wedding off their children to create bonds between other families and guarantee safety, or they end up starting wars, or they end up killing people, depending on who you are. But that's kind of what's going on, so you have a bunch of drama that's going around trying to attain the highest power that you can. Across the sea in another area, we have the last of the dragons, which used to be in the first area, but they got knocked out, or they got booted out essentially by the current families there because of lordship and rulership. They wanted to balance things out. So what's happening with the last of the dragons is that they're building up an army to come across the sea and gain back their throne. So we have that going on. And then in another area, which is north of the first area, so we have essentially two continents, I guess you could say, but north of the first continent, if you divide it in half or something like that, you have this more mythological location that we have a giant ice wall that blocks it off, and so any story that is usually told will refer to mythological stuff that is then considered up north. What's going on up north is probably the most important in my opinion, due to the fact that we have things that are very sinister starting up, such as White Walkers. In terms of like comparison, White Walkers put Dementors to shame. So in case you guys are big Harry Potter fans, if you think Dementors are scary, White Walkers will just totally clean their butts. Couldn't say that for some odd reason. But we have some stuff going on up north that is starting up, but no one's paying that much attention because it's past a wall. But I feel like it's going to play a very large and important role later in the series itself. Now, things that I like with this book. First off, we have the idea of violence and action and some really awkward like topics and ideas going on. But I love this because when I think of historical old England or Europe, where you had the kings and you had people that were marrying off each other, trying to not start wars, but you still get wars or battles and whatnot, it's not as happy as it can come off as sounding, especially when you're a kid and you hear these stories, you think it sounds great. But it's not. It's very dismal. It's not very good in terms of a lot of things. You have things that are really awkward, things are violent, it is essentially very action-paced on its own in a way. So I enjoy the fact that Martin does take this concept and uses it in his novel because a lot of fantasy does have that idea. When it comes to a time era or a time period, it's an older era that doesn't have the technology that we currently have. I also enjoy the fact that this book does a great job of explaining food. Anyone who knows this book will understand the food, to the point that I believe somebody actually ended up going through the books and has made recipes of the different types of food that is explained in this book. So if you guys are reading the book and you guys get hungry, you should go find those recipes and make the food, and then you can satisfy that hunger. Which is kind of awkward, but really cool at the same time. I also enjoy the fact that this book has a variety of characters. You have everyone from their life is perfect or seems perfect. You have people that things are just awful, or you have a progression or a growth of somebody that starts off great and gets worse as they go. You even have people that have terrible backstories or they're anti-heroes. And it's to the point that you get to know these characters on a personal level. So whenever you get to a chapter that is a continuation of their storyline or their adventure, you can instantly reconnect with them. You know what's going on. You know what they're probably going to do. So I love that. I love that variety. And Martin does a great job of not mixing too much of it with other characters, so you don't kind of get this feeling that you're reading somebody else's story. Additionally, we have dragons. I think I made a note on that. There's dragons. I like dragons. There you go. Now, what I dislike, well, actually, and I also want to go back to the characters thing. You also end up hating a good number of them, and I'm just going to name off a few because you'll hate them regardless of when you read the book. You hate Joffrey, you hate Cersei, you hate Jaime, you hate Viserys, you hate them, and the fact that you hate them is extremely helpful for making everyone else seem so much better, which is great. Yeah. Alright, so now to dislikes. Mainly the dislike is just the fact of the politics. Just for future knowledge, I guess. I don't do politics very well, mainly because it comes from a personal thing. When it comes to things like voting season or election season, I just want to be a hermit and go live in the woods until it's all over, because I get sick and tired of politics. So that's why when I'm reading fantasy, I do get tired of it. Sometimes it's really well done that I'll stick with it. But if it gets to the point that there's so much politics, it starts bogging me down and I don't want to read it for a while. So that's the only thing for me. It does really well for the story itself, but it does bog down at times. And yeah, that's pretty much why I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. And yeah, if you haven't read the book, do so. If you've seen the show, still read the book. It's still awesome. But yeah, I would say, and also for someone who watches the show and has read the first book at least, I would say the show does a great job. So I'm very proud of that. So yeah, there we go. I will see you guys next week. I'm not sure what day yet. We'll figure it out. But you guys have a great night, and don't feed the trolls. Bye.